Hello. Okay, call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners on January 3rd, 2023. Joanne, will you do roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Ernst,
Here.
Commissioner Engel, Commissioner Vogelsang,
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Any changes to the agenda? Nope. Public request. We would like to, real quick, invite the new members of council to address the commission if you'd like to say hello, introduce yourself, however you want to do it. If not, that's totally fine. Button on the microphone.
Good afternoon. Mark Wigder, 3863 Northwest 53rd Street. I am councilman-elect for Seat B for Boca Raton City Council. Thanks for having me. I'm a local real estate attorney and business person, and I've had interest here for many, many years, and I've raised my children here. I'm so excited to give back, and I enjoy using all the resources that the city and the parks provides. So with Craig's little push, I'm here to start learning about all the important issues that are going on here. So I appreciate the invite, and I'm excited to get involved.
Fran?
Thank you. My name's Fran Nacklis. I think I've met all of you by now or knew some of you from before. I am not your newest council member anymore. I am your newest council member elect for Seat A, and just over a month now. I've lived here since 1996 full time, grew up in Delray. I raised my 4 kids here on all the parks and beaches. I was a nurse until I retired about a year ago. And I'm very, very, very happy to be able to serve our residents right now as your newest city council member. So thank you all for having us tonight.
And there you go.
Testing. Can you hear me now? Okay. So again, Robert Duquette, 5351 Northwest 3rd Terrace. Last time I was here in person, I asked about the 3 Ps, which I was told at that time, you're not doing 3 Ps. All I've heard from the commission since then is about your 3 Ps and your plans for 3 Ps. I just handed out your document dated June 8th, 2020. It was the legal opinion from the state of Florida Attorney General that, as you all know, the bottom line is that you're not allowed to legally sell, lease, or otherwise convey real property owned by the district. And that was referencing sections, chapter of the Florida statutes 2003-313 and 2004-48204. The real issue is also the opinion that your legal staff have provided, your legal counsel, regarding the 3 Ps. And that is regarding a completely different section of the code, 255.065, which I've highlighted on each one of your documents. So while you're talking about 3 Ps a lot, it looks like you're talking about 2 different completely pieces of legislation. Yes, you could do 3 Ps if your enabling legislation allowed that. And according to the Florida Attorney General's office, that of course is not the case. So again, with all due respect to your legal counsel, it looks like you're talking apples and oranges here. So I think that also about 2 months ago, you talked about setting up an RFP for some of the things you're talking about for 3P. And I think that would be smart for you. If not for you, I'm sure someone else would do it, is to run that by the Florida Attorney General to see if in fact, before you wait for months to see if you can get this back from potential users of the 3P, then find out that the Attorney General may not allow it. So again, that's with the reference to the items in your public-private partnership. Also, it's somewhat amazing to some of the people who've been here for many months or many years on this project, that you're going to try to give money, not give money, but give the property to third parties to operate. Some people think that's a real giveaway to some people, either in the golf business or other types of repeat potential operators, as opposed to having the city own the property and operate the property. And one last thing about your proposal is that your hill area, I hope you plan on having some fences and things like that. And the security that has been repeatedly mentioned by the concerns of the residents. I haven't heard any mention about any of your presentations about the security. And if you're going to have areas where bicyclists can be BMXing around, we already have dirt bikes running through the property as it is right now. So we definitely want to see security with fencing to keep people out during hours, that whether it be casual bicycles or it be BMXs, because I think that would be a real concern to have people going through the property, especially, like I said, we've already seen this with the dirt bikes. Again, thank you for your time, and just something that I had noticed in my research of your 3P operation. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Just as a note, though, I did mention security in my speech this morning. And we talk about it almost at every single meeting, that it is of high top priority. So.
My name is Harold Chaffee. I'm the president of Keep Golf in Boca. I want to wish everybody a happy new year and the best of health to all of you. I'm happy to see half the city council here. Welcome aboard. I have to concur with Robert. We've made so many mistakes in this project, and which have slowed us down. Nobody wants anybody to be embarrassed or create a problem. And I think that it would be beneficial to us to take that venture and get a hold of bring it right out in front, expose it to them and find out what they're going to say. You'd be surprised what they say. I really don't know, but you certainly don't want to get turned down if they're doing all this work and then they go back to the drawing board. And even before you start the east side, you should find out if you can't do this, then what are you going to do with the big vacant property you left? You should have some kind of a plan or an action, like if it doesn't work out the way it was, where you want it. And the other thing too is that you made a great presentation today. You really did. It was very impressive. I was impressed. That's hard to do. So. Anyway, thank you very much for everything you're doing, and a happy new year.
Okay. We will close public requests and we will start our regular business, the election of officers. So I will go ahead and turn it over to our vice. Oh, did I skip that? Sorry. Approval of the minutes of the previous board meetings on December 19th.
Approve.
Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright? Motion passes.
Okay, now on to our regular business. The first item, the election of officers. I'll turn it over to Bob, or you want to go? I was just going to turn over to the vice chair to go ahead, and Susie, you want to take it?
Like to not rock the boat and nominate our current chair, Aaron Wright, for the position of the 2023 chairman.
Madam Chair, I wasn't going to rock the boat, I promise you. But thank you, Sue. I agree with your nomination.
You could accept the motion to close nominations if that be the will of the the maker of that motion. In the absence of any other nominations.
Move to close nominations. Second.
No discussion? Joanne?
You're going to take the roll on the nomination for Ms. Wright as the chair for the next ensuing year under the rules.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Madam
Congratulations.
Chair, if I might, just one comment is that over the past year, I've seen, you've been remarkable in the way that you've managed the meeting, and I compliment you on that. And it's a learning curve when you're just take over that position, as you probably know, but you followed the guidance of the good executive director, and I thought you did a marvelous job, and I thought it deserved another term. Now that you've got complete grip on things, that it'll be an even easier job for you this next time. Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Rollins as vice chair for the 2023.
No? Joanne?
Need to move to close nominations.
Nominations.
This is roll call for
Yep.
vice chair. Commissioner Ernst, Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright. Motion passed.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate the best treasurer we have ever had at the Beach and Park District, Mr. Craig Ernst, for the 2023.
Yeah, my second. In gratitude.
Any discussion?
So
Move to close.
nominations.
Commissioner Ernst, Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Easy. To number 2, regular business presentation on accessible playgrounds by Mr. David Ogman.
Thank you.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Sure. David Ogman. My address is 4221 Northwest 66 Lane in Boca in Woodfield Country Club. And I have a special needs 7-year-old son, Jordan. And Jordan's handicapped, has difficulty walking. And we find that the playgrounds within Boca, there's many playgrounds, but we find that many of them are inaccessible to handicapped kids like Jordan. Getting him out of the car and carrying him to the playground from the parking lot. First, we have to find the handicap or disability spots. And then once we find those spots, we have to carry him several hundred feet or yards to the playground. And many of the playgrounds have like wood chip bottoms, which is very difficult for him to walk. So he falls. The playgrounds are very high. So when you have to get up onto the playground structures, you have to climb up a ladder. Jordan can't climb up a ladder. Recently, we put him up. We had him climb up a ladder. He goes to the top. And then since we can't reach up there, he falls, he busts open his head, rush him to get 10 stitches across his forehead and his eyelid that busted open. So we're just trying to figure out I don't have a presentation today. I can easily put a presentation together. Just trying to understand if Boca Raton Park District has considered special needs and accessible playgrounds. And then if so, if I can put something together. Currently, what we do is we drive 40 minutes to either Boynton Beach barrier-free playground, which is a pretty good example of a playground that is accessible. It has a rubber bottom, which is easy for handicapped kids so they can take their wheelchairs on it. And it has very wide entrances for the playground so they can actually get in there. We also drive up to Wellington. They have a great accessible special needs playground as well. And then there's signs all over the playground that says that they took into account sensory issues that the kids might have and accessibility issues. And then the other one we drive to is in Parkland. I don't know the name of it, but it's in Pine Tree Park, I think it might be called or something like that. So we drive to Parkland, but traffic on 441 getting to Parkland is 40 minutes. Wellington and Boynton are 40 minutes to an hour. So those are our closest playgrounds that we can get to. Boca has tremendous playgrounds. It's just difficult watching other kids play while Jordan's excluded, and we just keep him strapped into his car seat in the car because it's not safe to go to any of these playgrounds. But maybe there's a way to use some of these playgrounds that have extra space, whether it's the grass or maybe it's an older playground structure that needs to be updated, and there's ways to update them to make it more accessible to kids such as Jordan or the many other kids that I'm representing today that are in wheelchairs or that need assistance to access these playgrounds. So that's pretty much just an open-ended question of if it's something that could be considered, and if so, I can put together a tremendous amount of ideas of what it can look like, and it could be reasonable in cost, or it could go up to crazy exorbitant costs like many other cities have. But I think we could start really small and just have something available.
Yeah, have you gone to the city council? Because so we only have certain parks that
Right.
we have
Right.
control over, and then so the city has control over most of like the like neighborhood smaller parks. We have Sugar Sand is I know that's a very overwhelming park.
Yeah.
It is built ADA accessible. But it is very overwhelming. I know to a lot, just to normal, kids and parents
Yeah.
chasing on that structure is very difficult, I feel like. But I do know one of the sections was built as like a special sensory area, I believe. I don't know if you've been there. Have you been there?
Yeah, I've been there. It's just difficult to get to it, and then
Okay,
it's for sensory, but then it's also not very accessible
right.
for kids. And we go to the Hornley Park on the Spanish River,
Okay,
which is a pretty good park. It's just way overcrowded with kids that aren't disabled or handicapped or special needs. So
okay.
it's
What about Lake Wyman? Have you been to Lake Wyman? I know that's a rubber bottom. Those
I haven't been to that one yet.
That's off of Fifth Avenue. I do know there's two separate playground areas there that are quite low.
Okay.
And they are also rubber bottom. I don't know if they're ADA accessible,
Okay.
but I do know they're rubber bottom.
I can check it out for sure.
But I mean, I think our board would be open to it, obviously, to looking at whenever we do redo any, obviously. It's something that we can definitely look into for sure. But I would also say that the city,
Yeah, I'll reach out to the city council as
the
well.
Parks and Rec department,
Okay.
when they're looking to redo playgrounds and things like that too, that I'm sure that they would be open to looking at that as well.
Great.
And then Ocean Strand we're opening too. There's no playground there, but it also it will be ADA accessible as well.
Yeah,
But
that'll
there's
be
no
great.
playground, but it's access to the water at least.
Yeah, that's great for
Yeah,
these
yeah.
kids. And I saw that some of the beaches, they actually have the blue
Yes.
thing so that like Jordan can actually walk on that instead of us trying to push a wheelchair through the sand, which is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
difficult. So yeah.
So it's
that
definitely
thing
something
works.
that I think we're definitely open to for when, parks need to be redone and things like that.
Okay.
And I would definitely say, actually, definitely talk to the city as well and go talk to city council as well.
Cool. do that.
So yeah, go ahead.
What I was thinking about was that Sugar Sand was the top lot, which is, as far as I can see, hardly used and also in need of renovation. The only issue that I see with that is there might be a problem with access because you've got to walk down a path, but maybe we can make the path wider. Maybe we can figure out a way to access it from the parking lots near the back of the baseball diamonds. But there's a facility that's hardly ever used in need of renovation. So maybe we can take a look at what it would be to renovate that park so to make it ADA accessible and to be able to be used by children like Jordan. I think that might be something we might want to take a look at, and something we could do not right away, not tomorrow, but maybe over the course of this fiscal year or next fiscal year.
Don't know if you are aware, we have a special needs soccer group in Boca that is just about to start up on January 14th.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out.
And I will give you all the information. We do have buddies who can assist Jordan on the field
be
in
great.
his wheelchair or out of
Okay.
his wheelchair.
That'd be awesome.
So I'll give you all the information. I'd love to have him sign up.
That'd be helpful.
Our Director of Recreation Services in the city is Greg Stevens, and he's actually listening to the meeting. So he sent me a message. I'm going to connect you to him. They're actually looking to redo the Lake Wyman playground.
Okay.
So he wants to connect with you and kind of hear more about some of the challenges you faced at some of the parks and
Okay.
see if they can look at that as
I
they
really
design
appreciate
that
it. Great to
playground.
hear that people are hearing, listening. Yeah.
Shagman, thank you very much for coming by and identifying the issue. Sue and I have been involved with recreation and one particular sports program a lot. And it's awesome to see these kids that have issues that they can't play a regular game of soccer being playing in the top soccer program. And I looked at a couple of the websites that our executive director gave us on facilities that would accommodate, individuals with disabilities like that. And I'm all for it. If there's anything that, I know Steve will keep pushing, I'll keep talking about it also, because I think having a child and seeing the expression on their face when they have excitement and they're playing in a playground, there's nothing like
Yeah,
that.
it's amazing.
I have grandkids, they're not disabled, but when they see a playground, they just
Right.
light up. And I'm
Absolutely.
sure Jordan must be the same way.
Absolutely.
And we need to have the ability for kids of all descriptions.
Right.
With these parks, are they typically designed specifically for kids that have disabilities like that? Or can,
The parks are, they don't, it doesn't need to be, but
Uh-huh.
the specific ones in Boynton that I'm talking about, there's signs all over it talking about sensory, and it has braille boards, and it has a lot of things. Yeah, I don't think that we need to do that and raise millions of dollars to build a park like that. I think just a park that's just easily accessible, that has the rubber bottom as opposed to mulch, and it has lower structures so that these kids can actually get onto the structures, and the structures aren't open on top where the kids, can potentially fall out and hurt themselves. Just to have something simply where the kids can go and have a little fun and feel like a kid, and that's it. There doesn't have to be some.
please know
some-
that you have
yeah.
support from our commission,
I
I'm sure.
appreciate that.
And, we have a number of things that we're always involved in. And I don't think we ever drop too many subjects, but it's always good when we have see a familiar face
Right.
promoting their project. And if there's things that you can help facilitate our understanding of the needs of these kids, pass those on to Bree and Harms, our executive director.
Okay, great.
And I think between us and the city, we should be able to do something that would be really nice
Yeah.
for kids like Jordan.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate that.
so you have our best wishes and our hopes that we can get that done for you.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Go ahead.
David, my colleague, thoughts on it and us really that, ADA barriers, we need to do more of that and so we can do more of it. But I just want to point out that, in Gumbo Limbo we're building a tower there, and that ramp structure is going to be fully ADA accessible, and it's at a very narrow slope. So it's tall, but it's going to give him Jordan a view. And we try to do that in everything new that is being done, whether it's in the city or the district. I know they are building out Meadows Park now.
Okay.
I think your best, thing, it's kind of, the right place, right time, and as they redo all these parks, we do them with a rubberized surface. Steve mentioned Sugar Sand Park. I know there are parts of the park that are rubberized, but there are many parts that aren't. And that's on us to put that on the priority list. Or get rid of the mulch and put the rubber in there.
Yeah, that would help.
And so I appreciate you just bringing that to our attention because there's more we can do. And we can, work towards some area. And the third, but the best part I think is really talking to Greg and its communication of where are these barrier-free things? The Boynton one's easy because it's barrier-free. That's its name. So you know where to go and
Right.
it's not going to have 1 million people there at it.
Right.
And that's what you need.
Right.
We need to have something like that. It's a matter of, it may not be as big as Boynton's, but
Right.
there are components of it that can be
Yeah.
special.
Exactly. And the kids would really enjoy it.
And so
you-
it's all doable.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Okay, and the third and final regular business is the CRA contribution discussion.
Commissioners, in your agenda packets on page 6, there's a brief memo about our contribution to the CRA, and I just want to go over some of the history. I think everybody is well versed on it, but just in case, I tortured myself by re-listening to our hearing that we had in 2020 to get exempt from it, and just wanted to go back through some things and talk about how we got to this point and what we think we can do in the future. So the city established its CRA in 1980. It's about 344 acres in the downtown area. They did that under the Florida statute, declaring an area as a blighted area or an area where affordable housing would go. And they did that to renovate the downtown area. So we started making payments to that CRA fund in 1986 under an interlocal agreement. And so basically anybody in that CRA area that gives us that we collect taxes from, that money all goes back to that area. And in 1989, we agreed to an amendment to that to allow them to use our money. The terms of the first agreement said it would go to recreation. So in 1989, we agreed to let them use that money to go towards the bond payment at Meisner Park. That bond was satisfied in 2019. So in 2020, we sought through the Florida statute to get an exemption because we felt like the money that we contribute would be better spent on our parks and beaches. And so we applied for the exemption through the Florida statute process. The city established their process through their CRA. They held a public hearing. Some of the key points in that public hearing that the city used to kind of as a way to deny the request, because ultimately we were denied the request to get exempt from the CRA payment. They said that we didn't satisfy certain parts of the statute, which kind of, I didn't really understand that part because we answered all the questions that were required. Another thing said that, we were obligated to fund the downtown area. And yes, in the statute, anybody that collects taxes is, but in the same token, we're also that same organization that the talking point is that we were established to fund beaches and parks. So we're not necessarily established to fund a downtown area, and everything we do does benefit all the residents in the city. And then on the other side of that, there's this argument that only people in the downtown area are paying for that. But on the same note, all those people in the downtown area are not paying for the parks that we pay for, like Red Reef or like Sugar Sand Park, because all their money, all their tax base goes right back into their area. So we tried to work out where we could get resident rates for non-district people, because in a sense, those people are subsidizing the beaches and parks for the people in the downtown area. And long story short, we were denied the exemption. The city never sent the letter that's required under Florida statute explaining the denial. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't change the outcome, I guess, but we would then have it in writing and some of those questions would be answered for us. As we continue to research this over the last year or two, there's an opportunity for us, because we've been funding the CRA for over 24 years, to legally cap our payment based upon what we paid this previous time, which was 2.3 million. And so the steps for that would be to hold a public hearing and pass a resolution. So tonight, I'm basically asking this board for approval to schedule that public hearing and move forward with the steps to pass a resolution that would cap our payment to the CRA. And just to be clear, the CRA is set to sunset in 2025, but there's been discussions at the 2 previous council strategic planning sessions that they've discussed extending the CRA. It was extended already once in 1995. They can certainly extend it again, and I don't believe anybody has to approve it other than the council themselves, because they were established before 1986. So Sam will walk us through the process. If this is something the board wants to move forward with, we would have a public hearing in February to hear a resolution and consider passing that. And all it would do is not get us out of our obligation to fund it, but just cap the payment so that more money would be spent on our beaches and parks because we have a lot more things to pay for at Gumbo Limbo, Red Reef, and everywhere, really. So Sam, I'll let you kind of explain the process and next steps if the board wants to move forward.
Thank you, Brianne. Madam Chair, good evening. Congratulations to you and to your colleagues this evening. Nice to be with you this evening and Happy New Year. And a couple of observations. The item that is on the agenda regarding the CRA contribution is founded in state law. There is an obligation which can be looked at, and to the extent that we've cited to you the section of the statute that allows for the capping of the commitment, which we've discussed, and what Brianne has brought up this evening is in section 163.387 of the Florida statutes, which governs CRAs. And what the language in the statute permits is the following. It says that I can get back here, hold on. Pardon me for a second. Very small print. Anytime more than 24 years after the fiscal year in which a taxing authority made its first contribution to a redevelopment trust fund by resolution, effective no sooner than the next fiscal year and adopted by a majority vote of the taxing authority's governing body, which is yourselves, at a public hearing, which has been asked for by the executive director, not less than 30, no more than 45 days after written notice by registered mail to the Community Redevelopment Agency and published in a newspaper of general circulation in the redevelopment area, the taxing authority may limit the amount of increment contributed by the taxing authority to the redevelopment trust fund to the amount of increment the taxing authority was obligated to contribute to the redevelopment trust fund in the fiscal year immediately preceding the adoption of such resolution, plus any increase in the increment after the adoption of the resolution computed using the taxable values of any area which is subject to an area reinvestment agreement. So Brianne's not making this up. It's a provision that's in state law, and basically it allows those who are payers under the obligation by statute to a CRA have the ability to take the statute to heart and can apply it specifically. It would require several things. If the board moves this evening to look into this issue, we'd have to prepare a letter on behalf of the district to the CRA advising of the intent to in fact adopt a resolution at a public hearing in February. Would have to be published as a public hearing. The notice of that would have to be published. And at the hearing that's so designated, this board as a public entity and as a special taxing district would have the ability to conduct a public hearing, adopt the resolution at that time, not this evening, but adopt it after public notice and public comment. It's a public hearing allowing for the public to be heard under Chapter 286, which is the Sunshine Law, for the purposes of essentially capping the contribution. You're not eliminating the conversation. You're not limiting the contribution. It is a limitation on your future obligations, as Brianne mentioned earlier. And the statute speaks of the actual formula, and it relates to what fiscal year it would be capped at. And to that extent, it's a legally permissible option that the board has. You're not terminating your agreement with the CRA. You're not violating the statute. You're simply implementing a section of the statute which actually allows for this to occur. And that's what's before you this evening, which is to essentially appropriately send the letter to the CRA, to notice the public hearing, and to bring at the meeting appropriately timed for that purpose, the resolution which we would draft for you in final form to essentially implement the matter, subject to a public hearing and conditioned upon public comment being provided as well. That's really what the statute does. We're not making it up. It's been provided for in the law. What you asked for previously was an exemption. This is not the same thing. This is a bit of a different legal animal. This one provides for the capping of the obligation, not the elimination of the obligation or the termination of the obligation, but a limitation of the cap on the obligation, which the law provides for. 24 years, I did the math, and essentially you could have exercised this option in 2010, but chose to do it now. And since 2010 to 2023, those commitments have certain financial implications to the district.
So my question would, if we could have done this.
13 years, excuse me, 13.
So if we could have done this in 2010, our attorney didn't know about it?
I can't answer that question. I don't know what he knew or did not know, but the answer is there was an option available if that were the case at the time. So it is an option in the statute. We were asked about it. We researched the question. It's available as an option to the board. Available now.
Steve?
Just a point of clarification, when you say when you talk about capping the contribution, are you talking about capping it at a certain total aggregate amount from the point we started paying it to the present, or capping future contributions at a fixed amount?
Under the statute, it's future amounts, correct,
Okay,
correct.
thanks.
And
And
that's why I
what-
read it to the record to make sure that we're clear about what statute we're referring to and what the cap actually relates to. Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And the other question I had regarding a public hearing, do we have to have a public hearing separate from a normally scheduled meeting, or can we have that as part of a normally scheduled
May I
meeting?
respond, Madam Chair? The answer is that you would have a regular meeting of the district, and during the course of the regular meeting, a specifically assigned item on the agenda for public hearing for this specific purpose. Correct.
Thank you. Just a couple questions to make sure I understand it. And some of it you may not, Sam, may help guide us through this.
I'll try.
So the CRA by its nature is a complicated thing. It's got separate meetings, it's got separate process. So it's been around for a long time, and it was established primarily for the rebuilding of Meisner Park. It's a blighted area, and to do things that looks pretty good now. And the only reason we kind of pushed back on trying to get out of it is because we didn't want to raise our taxes. And we were under the impression that, at least I was under the impression when I got on this board, it was going away. And it was going away for a couple of reasons. One, there was 2 interlocal amendments, an agreement between this district and the city, for number one, it was for recreation, then it became for the bond payment. And then it became, okay, the bond payment was done. And that was when we were planning to kind of exit the whole thing. So is the CRA, and it's a question of the CRA, it's a set rate based on the property values. It's not a millage rate that is adjusted or determined by the city or anyone.
Let me respond quickly, Madam Chair. It is a formula based upon valuations. That's correct, which is analyzed every year. So as the property values go up, and if the district meets the not the district, but the CRA meets the qualifications of the statute, there is a potential increase in the increment that's payable and required to be paid by those who are taxing authorities and those who are property owners in the district.
So it's kind of on its own path. It's a fixed rate times a property value. And if property values go up or property values go down, it goes up or down.
It can change.
That's right.
That's correct.
So we are in Florida, property values have gone up. They've gone up significantly. And so our contribution to that has gone up significantly. And so, I think we should proceed with the motion to cap it at a minimum. And I challenge anyone to say, be transparent. I mean, I looked at 2 of our city council members to look at it carefully in your role as CRA members is what is the purpose of the CRA? And if it's a taxing authority, fine. Should that be in city taxes, or should it be, for its purpose or not? It's easy to rubber stamp it and continue it, but maybe it shouldn't be continued if it's served its purpose. So for us, it's a significant fee, and we, wrote a check for 2.3 million. Was it last year?
Yeah, just to your point, Craig, this past year, we wrote a check for 2.3 million. In 2020, it was 1.4. So when you talk about the increase in property values, it could be pretty significant over the course of just a couple of years.
Yeah, it's just that's a huge amount of an increase for us, and as it is for any other taxpayer in it. So without any kind of road to an end date of it, I think I do certainly endorse us moving forward with having a public hearing at the next available meeting, 30 days, 45 days.
Question, we'll do the resolution to cap it, but if property values go down and our payments go down, it goes down. We're not set at the 2.3, correct?
The way the statute reads, if I may just again, this is again, at any time more than 24 years after the fiscal year, et cetera, after the public hearing, the governing body, et cetera, public hearing held not less than 30, no more than 45 days after written notice by registered mail to the Community Redevelopment Agency and published in a newspaper general circulation in the redevelopment area, the taxing authority may limit the amount of increment contributed by the taxing authority, which would be this organization, to the redevelopment trust fund to the amount of increment the taxing authority was obligated to contribute to the redevelopment trust fund in the fiscal year immediately preceding the adoption of such resolution, plus any increase in the increment after the adoption of the resolution computed using the taxable values of any area which is subject to an area investment agreement. So the answer is that the formula is created by the statute, and it would be implemented under the statute. And there's basically 3 steps here, one of which is if you by motion this evening were to adopt direction to the staff to present this matter further, there would have to be a letter sent to the CRA, which is a separate legal body from the city council. It's not from the standpoint of the statute, it's a separate entity, to notify the CRA and to also coordinate with the public publishing of a newspaper of general circulation in the CRA area, the notice of intent to essentially consider the resolution, bearing in mind that your motion this evening would not adopt the resolution, would simply set in motion the letter notifying the CRA of your intention and providing the notice of a public hearing to be conducted by the entity, by you, at a future moment under the statute, at which you would then take public testimony and make public consideration and ultimately make a decision as public fiduciaries in the context of this decision, which you would make at that time. Your motion this evening only sets in motion the process, implements the process to get to a resolution at a public hearing, appropriately noticed, consistent with the statute, which includes a letter to the CRA advising of your intentions. So it is not a final decision of any kind. It is a preliminary step along the road that requires your attention to get to the final resolution should you decide to adopt it.
And Tara, I agree with what Craig said. I mean, when I initially got on the board, I was aware of it, and we agreed to use the funds to pay off the Meisner bonds, which when they were completed, I think a lot of us were of the opinion that our obligation would go away. And I don't know, I haven't looked at a CRA's budget to see how the money is being spent, but our charge with our taxing dollars is to beaches and parks, which I think is evident. And now that, the CRA or the statute has indicated, as it said, it's established among other things to repair a blighted area and or provide affordable housing to residents. I think we've accomplished the downtown area. I mean, it's a beautiful area, and certainly it's improving with the Brightline station and all the other issues. And I would have to agree with my fellow commissioners that we're not trying to get out of the obligation, but we want to cap it since we feel like that our obligation truly has been met, and now it's time to try to put a prim line on or the maximum what we're paying by capping it. And I would certainly like to make a motion that we move forward with that discussion and toward capping our obligation to the CRA.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to commend Brianne for bringing this to our attention, because this is a very important piece of information for all of us. I still have a problem that district residents don't get the same consideration, even though their tax dollars are going toward the CRA. And I just want to make that public. I don't blame you guys. I mean, you didn't establish this, but it just is kind of a thorn in my side to do that. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say that after listening to that hearing again, we did bring that up in the hearing, that the fact that and how it's rephrased by city staff is that, nobody in the district is paying those CRA taxes. Well, they're not paying those CRA taxes, but they are funding all the beaches and parks that we fund, which is Red Reef, which is a city owned property. They're funding all of DeHornley Park, the operation and maintenance there. They're funding all of the dog park. They're funding everything from Gumbo Limbo, and then of course the parks we own too. So they're paying for all those things, and the people in the downtown area, their money is going directly back to that downtown area. So in a sense, all the other city residents and the district residents are subsidizing their use of all the parks and beaches that are outside of that 344 acre span. And so I think it's, there's this spin on it that they're not paying for the downtown area. They're not, but they're paying for all the beaches and parks that the people that live in the downtown area are using. So it's kind of a semantics with the words, but we did push that. And the original ILA talked about residency rates. And the district residents don't get residency rates at the tennis center, which is in the CRA, or the community center programs. And so those were just some simple things that we were asking for during that exemption process that were pretty much dismissed in the council in their conversation, because they kept spinning it around that nobody in the district pays for the downtown area. So I just wanted to,
Do we get
rehash
a,
that.
do we get a line budget of what the CRA uses their money for?
their budget actually is now included in the city budget. I think they can do that, right? Yeah. But it's within the city's annual budget.
Well, I agree with our other commissioners, and I'd like to hear from you, Madam Chair.
Well, I'm a little confused. So we went and we tried to get out of the payments after we thought that, you know, the Meisner bonds were paid in full. Why is it the city that denies our request, that we're the ones who are paying them for it, but they just say, no, you're going to continue to pay? Well, wouldn't they always just do that? I mean, they're getting $2.3 million, and why would they say, oh, no, you don't have to pay anymore?
If I may respond, Madam Chair, the city council and the CRA board, I'm based on what I understand in this organization, is the same face. It's the same group. But when sitting as the CRA board, although they're city council members, are also sitting as CRA board members who have specific statutory authority, responsibilities, and obligations. So the denial, I was not physically present at that discussion. Brianne was. It was the council sitting as the CRA board, if I'm not mistaken, Brianne. So.
After the audit had just been completed on the CRA, there was a significant amount of reserves in that CRA budget. And so our argument during that process was, you have all these reserves. You don't need at the time it was like 1.4 million. We could use that to fund the renovations at Gumbo Limbo. We could use that money to build Ocean Breeze or all these other things that we have in our beaches and parks that need to be done. But during that process, the city then went back and charged the CRA for some work that was done, I mean, going back into the 90s to kind of eat up those reserve funds to show them that they did need our money to continue operating the CRA. So there was, I feel like the money, and it's just, you know, me looking at it, I feel like our money, everything we spend goes back into the city. It goes back to all the residents. And so I feel like that money would be better spent on our beaches and parks, which are pretty popular among everybody, visitors and residents.
What's that number?
It was 18 million.
Past charges,
Right.
city staff or whatever,
Correct.
going back many years.
Into the 90s, yes.
So going back to the 90s, and we already fund a big portion of recreation services employees for at the parks, and we know they handle a lot of things. So there's some double dipping. It just doesn't feel right.
We were just given a one-page spreadsheet on it. We didn't get like a breakdown, like you're saying, of the staff and different things like that. We just got a little breakdown of those charges.
Yeah.
First, I have to say, this reminds me of something that went on in metropolitan New York and still going on in the 30s and 40s and 50s, when bridges across the East and Hudson rivers were being built. There was a 25-cent toll to pay off the bonds. So make a long story an epic, the toll across the Hudson River, the George Washington Bridge, and the Verrazano Narrows Bridge is now $11 round trip. And that money is now used, the bonds have long since been paid off. The money is now used for a variety of other things. The only difference is the city of New York, or actually the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, has said, well, we're going to use the money for other things. The problem that I have here is that the city is saying, well, yeah, we need it for CRM. And here they owe us money from 20 years ago. So we're going to collect that. And that's why we need it from them. And the truth of the matter is, it's not that it's needed for that 344-acre piece of property. It's needed to free up other money that the city uses. So we're in effect subsidizing the city to that extent. Also, bearing in mind that there are still parts of the city of Boca that do not pay Beach and Park District taxes, but use Beach and Park District facilities. And this was supposed to have been remedied years ago and still hasn't been remedied. And there's no inclination that I see that the city would want to remedy this. And speaking to our two newest members of council, I invite you to look into the situation at the Polo Grounds. The old Polo Grounds in Boca, where none of those residents pay Beach and Park District taxes because it's technically outside the border of the Beach and Park District. And they still, as city residents, get to use the facilities that we pay to operate and maintain. So, you know, I think we need to get all this rebalanced so that, yeah, we're going to continue to pay for what we pay for, but with the addition of money that, you know, people are getting freebies for. And it's, you know, it's not fair to all the members or all the residents of our district. I'd like to see this fixed if it's at all possible. And this goes along with what's happening with the CRA. So that's my 2 cents.
A question. And I would like to express to our two newest members of council, we're still partners with the city. And I want you to come away with thinking that we're unhappy with things. We just are trying to recapture some funds that we could use to help develop Ocean Breeze Golf Course. So, but to Steve's point, you know, I think at some point we have to address that one inequity in Royal Palm. The polo fields were brought into the city, but we're not allowed to expand our jurisdiction to cover them. So they pay no taxes to us, but yet are using our facilities as residents of the city. So at any rate, as I said, I'd like to call the question, Madam Chair.
Yeah, just had one more comment though. You know, I agree with capping to go ahead with the capping of the funds. But again, like if they extend that from 2025 on, that's another 2.3 every single year after that. So I don't agree with paying this money that we have to pay to them. I think we should, I just don't understand how we go about getting released from the ILA from this by proving our point that our funds aren't going to the beaches and parks anymore. And that's not a blighted area anymore. I drove through, I wanted to see the Bright Line today, so I drove through there. It's not blighted anymore, and they're not using it for the funds that they're supposed to be using it for. So why are we still paying it?
Well, I think perhaps the first step toward reconciliation of that is maybe capping it. And then as we explain our position to, you know, fresh candidates on the council that might take a different view of it, I think that we may have, you know, a better opportunity to apply some common sense to this issue.
Okay, so we have a second on this. So our first step will be to cap it, and then we'll continue to talk about it this year, I think.
Steve
Yeah,
seconded.
go ahead.
To amend his motion, the goal here is to notify the CRA via letter appropriately to cap it, and with the intent to evaluate a resolution at a public meeting according to the statute.
Madam Chair, if I may just quickly restate for the record, the motion as offered by Commissioner Rollins and by Commissioner Engel is to set the process in motion. As I said earlier, this does not commit the answer. What it does is it requires that subsequent to this evening's meeting, should you decide to vote in favor of this item by majority vote, we would assist the director in sending a letter notifying the CRA of your intention to do so, which is the capping issue, and adopting a resolution. You'd also have to provide for an advertisement of a public hearing. If set the date tonight, by the way, as best we can. Brianne, do we have a date for that, by the way? February the 6th.
6th, yes.
Would be the public hearing date, at which time the resolution, which we have prepared simply in preliminary draft form, would be actually on an agenda as part of your agenda, separately broken out for the purpose of the public being able to speak to the subject. At that time, you'd have to then make a decision that on that resolution, whether to implement the statute, which is not required by law. It is an option provided for by law, which you would have the option to consider at that public hearing on February the 6th.
Well, Steve already did the second. Yeah, so Joanne, yep.
Ernst? Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang? Commissioner Ray? Motion passes.
Okay, so we'll move on to approval of payroll and invoices. Mr. Treasurer.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang? Yes. Commissioner Wright? Motion passes.
Okay, reports and discussion items. You want to go first?
Commissioners, the tower bids were due today, but the city has extended that bid to January 21st, just the holidays through some wrenches in some of the potential contractors' plans to get their proposals together. So they extended that to January 21st. We kind of ran into that with the roofing bid. So it's a hard time of year. So I think that was the right thing. So we make sure we get plenty of bids back on that. Did both sides of my paper here. We're going to be presenting, Melissa, myself, and CJ will be there at the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting on January 10th to talk about the Patch Reef Pickleball Court. So we're looking forward to getting their feedback on that. And that is my updates.
District Council.
For the time and attention further, a couple of items, if I may. At the last meeting, there was some conversation about the temporary construction easement, as you know, which is at Ocean Breeze. We've had some discussions with the legal counsel on behalf of the grantee, the person that was granted the easement. Having discussed the issue further with Brian, we're going to ask that you defer any further action with regard to either implementing the default opportunity or a cure opportunity to the next regular meeting of the board. We expect to have some more information from the from legal counsel for the person that has the easement, which we can bring back to the meeting on the next meeting of the board in January. So we've had some productive discussions with legal counsel, but we need to address them further and then address with you further how best we can approach that question then. Secondly, you've already considered the resolution this evening with regard to the capping of the fees, which we discussed earlier. Couple things. At the last meeting of the board, we discussed the option of engaging legal counsel as special counsel, bond counsel, for the purposes of looking into the issue of 3P, looking into the issue of the AG's opinion, looking into the issue of our special act and how it applies to the three, as well as the existing bond transactions that occurred in connection with the actual acquisition of the property. We have had that conversation with Jolinda Herring, who's a managing partner for Bryant Miller and Olive, which is a firm out of Tallahassee. They have offices all over Florida. We have an engagement letter which came in today from Jolinda, which provides for an hourly rate and also provides for the work to be performed. And to the extent that we responded back to Jolinda today, we recognize that if they go over $5,000 or expect to go over $5,000 in the capped fees, the board would be required to make a decision to go beyond that should there be a need to do so. The issue is a delicate one. The answer is that there are a number of different issues on the table with regard to the interpretation. Without getting into debate of Mr. Duquette or anybody else for that matter, the memo that we prepared, which we stand by, was the memo dated September 24, 2021. Section 255.065 of the Florida statutes is the 3P program under the state of Florida statutes. That is the statute regarding 3P. There is no other statute in connection with that item. That is how the statute reads. We've cited to you the various and sundry subsections of section 255.065. The AG's opinion dated June the 8th of 2020 is a specific item with regard to interpreting our special act and how it applies or does not apply in the context of, as the AG referred, sales, leases, or otherwise convey real property. We've asked you, with your guidance and direction, to engage an outside lawyer. I'm not legally competent to give you an opinion about the bonds. The bonds are issued, have specific language. The objective is to avoid potentially converting them into taxable bonds or creating a challenge for the bondholders. The Bryant Miller firm is well-known statewide for what they do and how they do it. They provide tax opinions. They provide bond counsel opinions. They represent the bondholders in bond transactions for many of our local government clients that we represent in South Florida. So we've asked them to look at the AG's opinion. We've asked them to look at our legal memorandum. We've asked them to take a look also at the bond transaction, as well as the interlocal agreement between the city and the agency, between the district. So those questions will be looked at in the context of what was asked for by the board at the last meeting, and we hope to report back to you by the next meeting where we stand with regard to the draft opinion. We had a very productive conversation with Joe Linda this past week, along with Brianne and Jacob Horowitz, and one of Joe Linda's partners, I believe, in one of their other offices, to talk about the issues. And just as a matter of thought, there are other ways to go about a transaction that would not violate the special act as it's been provided, that would not be a sale, a lease, or a conveyance. And we've asked that they look into that situation so as not to violate the bond covenants and so as not to violate the interlocal agreement as well, and to get a separate opinion for that purpose. And last but not least, if I, Madam Chair, at the end of this past year, which is only days ago, we provided you with several legal memoranda on 3 topics that we had some conversation with several of you on, which I think warrant some review. We're not going to review them all this evening, but I think it's worth your review. One of the memos we prepared related to the public meeting notices under House Bill 7049, adopted in the last session of the legislature. That statute, which we're still looking at, would allow the county, in any specific county, to actually create a central location for the publication of notices. The objective was to essentially pull back from the media, the hard media, an opportunity for local governments to utilize a county system, which would be a central system for notices. Whether it applies to special districts is not exactly clear. What we do know is that we don't know is whether or not the Palm Beach County has adopted such a program. Broward County has not done one just yet. They're looking into it. They've actually begun discussing with a vendor the actual outsourcing of the issue of the central location of Broward. What they're doing in Palm Beach is not yet clear to me. We presume that the statute adopted as 22-103 laws of Florida in 2022 would apply to special districts as well, but we don't know that answer yet. But we do know that the statute does exist. The intention was to essentially allow for a more seamless way to access public information from public entities that are required to publish notices, which you do from time to time. So the memo was given to give you a brief explanation of how the statute works and what we think it means. Whether or not the county is actually going about creating a central repository for that function is unknown to us at the time. We will look into that between now and the next meeting as well. The second memo we prepared, based on inquiry by some board members, relates to emergency preparedness, which is Senate Bill 98. And as the commissioner made some specific questions, there was a $500 million allocation from the legislature this past year for that purpose. To that extent, it is an emergency fund, and this bill basically provided for the funding source, and whether it applies to issues that may impact the district. I think any governmental agency that would otherwise qualify by state law would be able to access those funds should there be a situation which would allow for that to occur. It is a sizable amount of money, debated in some great detail, and was adopted by the legislature this past session. And in each instance, we've given you copies of the bills as well. And the last one is one which has gotten some public attention as recently as this past week, which is the lobbying issue, the anti-lobbying issue. You may remember that this relates to House Bill 7001, referenced as Laws of Florida, Chapter 2022-140, which basically codified what the voters did in 2018, and essentially providing a limitation on lobbying for 6 years after someone leaves office. You are not just appointed officials by the voters, you're elected officials. And the interesting issue is whether or not this statute is a limitation on you as elected officials for a special district. What we find interesting is it speaks in terms of cities, counties, and political subdivisions. You're neither of the three. You are a corporate body. You're a creature of special law. You're a creature of state law under the special act which governs this organization going back to 1974. And whether or not it applies to special districts is not exactly clear, but the end result of which is that we are looking at the issue. which may impact you in the context of your limitation on lobbying once you potentially leave office, which is a valid question. Now, there was a lawsuit filed at the last week in December by some elected officials, some of whom were Democrats, some of whom were Republicans, some of whom were in the legislature, some of whom were county commissioners and city commissioners in federal court. And the matter was not disposed of at the time. So there was no injunction issued by December 31st. So the law is going into effect in the state of Florida, which provides the limitation on lobbying to elected officials. Whether it applies to you is not exactly clear. The statute that I referred to was the implementing statute. It was required by the Constitution to actually implement that. And that's in Chapter 112 that governs those relationships and what you can or cannot do. So under Amendment number 12, the district elected officers may not be compensated to represent a person or entity before the legislature, any state government body or agency, or any political subdivision of the state during office and for 6 years after vacating on issues of policy, appropriations, or procurement. That was in the Constitution. Item passed. And to that extent, I'm happy to respond to questions as things proceed, but the questions were asked of me. We decided we should do a memo and put it out there so you could take a look at it to make sure that you're aware of it. I was aware of the fact there was a lawsuit that was pending, which I learned just days ago was not disposed of in favor of the plaintiffs in that case. One of them was Senator Rene Garcia from Miami-Dade County. One was an elected official, a city official. I don't know whether or not former Mayor Steve Geller, Senator Geller was a plaintiff or not, but there was, again, the lawsuit's still pending, but the injunction was not issued referencing the statute. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that issue if I can.
It was very exciting, but I've never been called a creature of special law. Despite that, my question really was on the emergency funding part, and maybe it's buried in there. What kind of concerned me is the property tax appraiser could waive collecting property taxes or rebate property taxes, in the event of a bad event like a hurricane.
Correct.
And, unlike others, the district has a very tight, we collect money and we spend money. It's all allocated immediately. And so we are not in the position to, refund or rebate stuff. And nor is it beneficial for the community for us to hold an unnecessary reserve. I mean, we just went through allocating in excruciating detail $5,000 to legal fees for looking at a bond payment. And yet, on the other hand, we got 2.3 million going out the door and we don't even know what it is until it happens. So my question though is that ability that is in the state statute to rebate, to allow a property appraiser to rebate it, and that doesn't have to be answered now. That creates a problem for us because if they could, if there was a major hurricane that hit Boca, you would have some severe damage, potentially, given what we know from Surfside, significant condo damage, which is the largest, that beachfront is a very large tax contributor to Boca and Palm Beach. My question, kind of thinking it forward, is if that happened, being in tune with that law that the governor put in place, is the state government going to reimburse us for those taxes? Is that the way that works? Or is that going to be up to the property tax appraiser saying, okay, we're not going to collect taxes or we're going to rebate last year's taxes? I think the intent was to make consumers whole, which is a good, noble intent. But if it comes from us, we won't have the money necessarily.
I mean, I can't answer that question this evening, but I do know that the reason for the funding of that sort was to essentially cover the issues of, again, what it speaks to, which is disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness, and response fund. That is a fund we assume is for that purpose, but I can't answer the question to know whether or not your question regarding what a property appraiser could do or might do or be authorized to do
That's not in it.
That's not in it. That's correct.
Okay, well, we can look at it a little bit further off.
Correct.
So thank you though for doing the homework.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, Steve?
First, David, thank you so much for coming down. We're Facebook friends, but this is the first time I got to see you in the flesh. What your presentation was informative, and maybe it lit a fire under us and under the city. I want to congratulate the officers of the commission on their reelection. You guys have done a great job. And I look forward to another great job. And to Aaron, I told you so.
But Brianne, are you going to update us on Pat's Reef Park, the pickleball? I mean, this is, one of the, I guess, the challenges in government work is why does it take so long to do something? Where are we with Pat's Reef Park and the pickleball?
It's an excellent question. We are in that city permitting, pre-permitting phase. Permitting phase, really. We're going through the process of all these departments looking at it, making their notes, having these phone calls. So our next step, we got the notes back from all the different departments in the city. Our next step is now to go to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, which is January 10th. So we'll go and speak to them. I guess I'm not, honestly, and this was a discussion that council had too, so I don't know if anybody's necessarily clear. Then these boards will then provide that information because eventually council has to approve the site plan after it goes through all these boards and they get a recommendation. So we're still in that process, but we're, I would say, still somewhat on track to keep the schedule. I don't know that we'll have it done by January that we wanted to have it done by, but we're trying to work it through as fast as possible. I know Melissa has had lots of meetings with city staff about some of their notes and getting some things addressed. There was some things in there that they wanted us to add onto the project that they've worked off now. So we're in that very tedious part that really held us up at Ocean Strand and is obviously delaying us here too. So we keep trying to push through it. That's where we're at.
For CGA to put together a timeline and present it to everyone?
Well, we had the timeline. Right now, we're kind of working on like these advisory boards only meet once a month. Some of them meet every 3 months. Some meet, whatever the quarterly thing. So if we have to get these advisory boards have to give their opinion on stuff, we're stuck with the schedules. So the plan was to get this out to bid, I think by March, to have it out to bid. It's probably not going to go out to bid until probably a month behind now. Just trying to meet these schedules.
Okay.
Bob?
Madam Chairman, first of all, I want to thank members of council to come visit with us tonight, and I hope they didn't come away frustrated with our frustration about things, because it's just something that we have to deal with, and you're hearing this probably for the very first time, but we're partners in everything that we do, and I'm looking forward to the fresh new faces on city council and bringing you guys up to speed on what we do. And I'm grateful that they came tonight to listen to this. We do have more fun meetings when we're talking about parks, like we were with this gentleman, Mr. Ogman. I'm so grateful that he came tonight as well to put a light on something that I think we sore need of in the community, and to our friend Mr. Chaffee and others. I think that your points were well taken. I think you can see that we're executing on one thing at a time to make sure that whatever we do on the west side, that we're going to be able to do it. Because otherwise, if it turns the bond around into a taxable transaction, then that would not be beneficial to us to do that. So we're looking at that from bond counsel, and then we'll take it to the next step in terms of what we're allowed to put on there and how we're going to do that. So I appreciate y'all coming in and staying with it to keep golf in Boca. And we're going to do our very best to keep that moving forward, but it's been a slog, and I wish it could have been a little bit faster, but we're looking forward to 2023. Happy New Year to everybody. And Aaron, congratulations. I look forward to working with you next 12 months.
Well, this morning I had the great privilege of seeing both our chairman and our executive director do an awesome job at the Federation. And I'd like to make a suggestion that you do a YouTube presentation, just like you did this morning, to put out on the internet so that more of the public can see such a great explanation of what we want to do at Ocean Breeze. you cited the economic impact, not only to local businesses in the city, but to the residents. You just made everything clear and concise and did a really, really good job. Also, maybe talk to the Chamber of Commerce. You might be, we might be looking at some opportunities for partnerships, once we establish what we can do for P3s. So I just was blown away, you guys. So thank you for doing that and taking your time. We've gotten some very positive feedback on the tennis courts here, and everybody I've talked to has just been wowed by it. So they appreciate that. I visited Quiet Waters this morning to see the mountain biking trails, because we've gotten some emails that were not real positive about that on the east side. I took some pictures. I showed them to Brianne. I think that we have opportunities after speaking to the head of the park rangers for security and for doing something that is a little bit unique in Boca. So I don't think we should dispense with the mountain biking trails. I think we should go forward with that. And also thank you, Fran and Mark, for coming, and I hope you come back. I really do. I think we're going to go forward having a really positive relationship with City Council, with fresh faces. I'm not dissing anybody who's there now, but I've known Fran for a while, and I know she has a positive impact on our community. So thank you both for coming. Happy New Year, everyone, and congratulations to our new existing chair people and our treasurer.
Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you all for coming, especially City Council members and Mr. Ogman. Thank you. Thank you for your vote of confidence for next year. I feel like I have taken the role on and, gotten my footing a little bit. So I'm excited for the next year and to kind of, get Ocean Strand opened, which will be exciting, and move ahead with Ocean Breeze. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. So you can see I can talk without getting nervous anymore, which is incredible. And I did a presentation today and I wasn't nervous at all. It's amazing. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And Bob, thank you for taking on the vice chair role, and Craig, you do an amazing job with the treasurer. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. So, and that was pretty much it. The only recommendation I had is if we could number those pickleball courts at Patrice, that would be awesome. Because there was some miscommunication over there. There was confusion with, there's a few courts that have the same numbers, but on different ends. Like, so somebody was on court 1 and we were supposed to be on court 1, and there was, a bit of an issue. And so we need to number the courts so that people are clear on where they're playing, because those courts are booked constantly. So, if somebody comes and say, you're on my court, they get really upset and say, no, this is my court. So we just need to make it clear which courts are what, and so that the front office is clear and the players are clear and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Of the pickleball, the reason I asked is that this has been, a long time in standing, and I think it needs to be prioritized. It's done through the very best construction management company to develop. A city uses them. So I don't understand why it takes so long, and this whole roundabout process for the city treating us like a developer to build it, I think is ridiculous. We are partners with the city in a lot of it, and it just takes, I've been on this board now for, 6 years? And it feels like, it took, 4 years to do Ocean Strand path. And I just don't understand it. I think that's, it doesn't need to have that level of oversight when, collectively we live and work in this community and we're not doing things on the cheap. We need some guidance, but we don't need every staff member of the city to look at everything. And we want to be a partner to do these things. I'd rather fund recreation projects at any park, not just the limited ones, but we got to speed these things along. It just takes too long. So That's my thoughts. And I do thank you, David, for the insight. We can do better and we will.
Adjourn.
Joanne?
Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
We are adjourned.